With question 119 of the Summa Theologia, we come to the end of Prima Pars. Tomorrow we will start Prima Secunda, which is a whole different section of the Summa. So congratulations, especially if you have journeyed through the entire first part of the Summa Prima Pars. Congratulations. Keep going. It only gets better from here. And we'll also apply all that we've learned in Prima Pars to the rest of the Summa, which is about man's return to God, right? Remember the Exodus Reditus. We come from God, we return to God. And so that middle section of the Summa, which is in two parts, Prima Secunda and Secunda Secundae, are all about man's return to God now that we've kind of laid the foundation of God and the angels and creation and human nature and the governance of the world in the first part of the Summa. Question 119, well, it's a doozy. It's a very interesting one, and it has primarily to do with biology. And of course, we're relying, Aquinas was relying on 13th century biology and what he knew at the time. I'm not much of a scientist, and so I just read this and find it interesting, but you can take it for what it's worth. And this should be a quick video. There's only 2 articles. And the first one, he says whether some part of the food is changed into true human nature. So we know that when we eat, we grow, right? Sometimes we grow more than we want to grow. But his question here is, does that food turn into human nature? We know it turns into the human body, but is it human nature? It's actually an interesting question. Is our body, of course, our body is part of our nature. We wouldn't have true human nature if we didn't have our body, right? So he says, according to the philosopher, the relation of a thing to truth is the same as its relation to being. Okay, ontology, being, what it is, right? Therefore, that belongs to the true nature of anything which enters into the constitution of that nature. Well, since food enters into and becomes our body in a sense, or helps our body to grow, at least the way he was thinking, then it must have something to do with our human nature, right? But nature can be considered in 2 ways. First, in general, according to the species, and secondly, as in the individual. So we have a human nature as far as what we all share together, but then we also are individual human persons with natures. And so he's making a distinction there where I, have my own, nature in a sense, because I am one individual suppositum, one person, but we share a nature as a species. And that's what he's getting at in regard to food and what role it has in being part of our nature, right? And whereas the form and the common matter belong to a thing's true nature considered in general, individual signate matter and the form individualized by that matter belonging to the true nature considered in this particular individual. Okay, so that's what I just explained. He's trying to make the distinction between the species and the nature in general, and then also the individual person. Thus, a soul and a body belong to the true human nature in general, but to the true human nature of Peter and Martin, I love when he picks individual names, belong this soul and this body. Okay, I have my soul, you have your soul, I have a body, you have a body. But we share human nature, and our bodies certainly are similar. Now, there are certain things whose form cannot exist but in one individual matter. Thus, the form of the sun cannot exist save in the matter in which it actually is. Okay, because there's only one sun, right? There's only that one sun. And in this sense, some have said that the human form cannot exist but in a certain individual matter, which they said was given that form at the beginning of the first man. So here he's saying that what was their one like matter with Adam and Eve, and then we all kind of inherited that, as opposed, it's kind of hard to explain or to understand, but I think that's what he's getting at. So whatever may be added to that which was derived by posterity, it's almost like original sin, how we all inherited original sin, right? From the first parent does not belong to the truth of human nature, as not receiving in truth the form of human nature. Okay, so I think he's making a comparison between the body and something like original sin, which was passed down through generations. But, said they, that matter which in the first man was the subject of the human form was multiplied in itself, and in this way the multitude of human bodies is derived from the body of the first man. According to these, the food is not changed into true human nature. We take food, they stated, in order to help nature to resist the action of natural heat and prevent the consumption of the radical humor, just as lead or tin is mixed with silver to prevent its being consumed by fire. So, if nothing else, it's kind of interesting to see where science was, back in the 13th century and what they were kind of thinking of. And because Thomas spent a lot of time thinking about every aspect of human nature. And so, okay, he says, I'm skipping a bit, but he says, therefore, but it would be adding to living bodies by their nutritive power if their food were not changed into their true nature. Secondly, because the active seminal power is in a certain impression derived from the soul of the begetter. Hence, it cannot have a greater power in acting than the soul from which it is derived. If, therefore, by the seminal power a certain matter truly assumes the form of human nature, much more can the soul, by the nutritive power, imprint the true form of human nature on the food which is assimilated. Okay, so he's saying that the soul is able to impose, part of human nature on the food that's being assimilated into the body, right? Also, food is needed not only for growth, else at the term of growth, food would be needful no longer. Okay, so when we got to the largest that we're going to get when we become an adult, he's saying it's not just for growth, it's for keeping our body alive, but also to renew that which is lost by the action of natural heat. But there would be no renewal unless what is formed from the food took the place of what is lost. Wherefore, just as that which was there previously belonged to true human nature, so also does that which is formed from the food. Therefore, according to others, it must be said that the food is really changed into the true human nature by reason of its assuming the specific form of flesh, bones, and such like parts. This is what the philosopher says: food nourishes inasmuch as it is potentially flesh. All right, so interesting, right? I don't know how much I claim ignorance as far as biology and that kind of stuff, so I don't know what exactly the food does with our body and how that all assimilates and we grow and it keeps us alive and that kind of thing. It's not my jam, but it's interesting to see what St. Thomas Aquinas teaches about this. Article 2, whether the semen is produced from the surplus food. So now he's concerned about that life-giving semen in the male and, how is that produced? And I'm actually going to zip to the very end of this because what he says, it remains to be said, therefore, that the semen is not something separated from what was before the actual whole. Rather, it is the whole, though potentially having the power derived from the soul of the begetter to produce the whole body. Now, that which is in potentiality to the whole is that which is generated from the food before it is transformed into the substance of the members. And so, whether the semen is produced from the surplus food, Thomas is saying, there's some relationship between the food that we eat and the production of semen, which then goes on, to cooperate with God and to produce this new human being, of course, with the cooperation of the female as well. All right, so that closes out Prima Pars 119, and this has been the end of the treatise on the conservation and governance of creatures, and this has been the propagation of man as to the body. Okay, these are biological questions that St. Thomas Aquinas has about the body, and that's how he closed out this first part of the Summa. Well, if you have been journeying with me all the way through this, thank you for the journey. I hope you're enjoying it. Thanks for the comments and the questions that you guys are leaving. It's been really helpful as I learn through this as well, because really this is a learning experience for me as well. I hope you're enjoying it. And I'll see you tomorrow as we begin Prima Secunda, the second part of the Summa Theologia. St. Thomas Aquinas, pray for us. God bless you.